What is up, everybody? Thanks so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. We got a special show. And we actually got some breaking news regarding the show, which we weren't planning on, discussing Rex Heuermann and the Long Island serial killer. And I got two special guests who drop the knowledge all the time. You see them on Core TV, you see them on Law and Crime, you see them everywhere. And these guys are amazing. And I'm truly lucky that they're both coming on with me. First, I got Joe Giacalone. I love saying his last name, Joe Giacalone. We got a retired NYPD sergeant, supervisor of the detective squad, extensive background in criminal investigation, had many prestigious positions in NYPD, but his favorite was the commanding officer of the Bronx Cold Case Squad. And this man has literally written the book on the Cold Case Handbook, and we're going to be giving out one today, folks. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we got Bob Motta, host of the Defense Diaries, the podcast that is taking over the world. In addition, over 20 years, criminal defense lawyer. He's always dropping knowledge. So excited to bring on Joe and Bob. What's up, guys?
Hey, man, what's going on, guys?
Thank you so much for coming here. And I'm gonna go right to it, guys. Let's go to the breaking news we got here, and here we. Sorry. Thanks, Joe. Just breaking news, folks. Breaking news. Just learned that the Las Vegas PD DNA lab will be conducting a direct comparison this week against Rex Heuermann's DNA and the DNA recovered in the case of murdered New Jersey mom Victoria Camara. Results expected in 6 to 8 weeks. So this dropped today, folks. This is new news, and I'm curious, Joe. You've been working a cold case for, it's been cold for like 10 years. All of a sudden you think, you got your guy here. And now you realize your guy is not just in, Long Island. He's been all over to a lot of different places. So what's going on right now behind the scenes with this investigation reaching out to Las Vegas and other places?
Well, yeah, basically the floodgates have just opened up now, right? So part of the investigation is always to see if your case is connected to anything else. And they started going back to where this guy's, been, where he owns property, where he lives, those kind of things. And this is what leads now to Las Vegas and, of course, in South Carolina and Atlantic City and everything else. And the true crime community's run a little bit wild with some of these things, but I think just a little bit. And, I just think that, listen, it's part of a cold case investigation 101, right? You got your guy. Now, let's see who else who might be responsible for, right? See if that connection exists. I would want to know everything about him. Now, this is not Suffolk County's job. This is all the other police departments' jobs. But they should know everything they can about this guy, including, his cars, his apartments, his travel itinerary, everything. I mean, you want to know the first sandbox he ever farted in, basically, in regard to this thing. I mean, it's just, you're going to take a deep dive into this guy, because once you have somebody that's responsible for at least 3 killings right now and possibly more, I mean, the 4th, I think, is definitely coming. But, maybe even beyond that, you got to keep on digging.
And I was going to ask you, sorry, Jay.
Go ahead.
So one of the advantage to this guy, as opposed to say like Gacy, so Chicago police, when Gacy got arrested, did nothing after they dug up all the bodies in the crawl space. Like they had no interest in trying to attribute him to anybody else. And at that point in the 70s, Chicago had 40,000 missing young men and women in that era between 72 and 78. And they didn't do anything, and part of the reason for that is in terms of trying to backtrack the things that you were talking about, the things that you're going to dig into in terms of especially his travel itinerary. I mean, he's way more on the grid. Even going back to like 96, there was still going to be banking records that are going to be more significant than anything they could have had in the 70s. And then we move into the late 90s, early 2000s. We've got, like the internet starts to evolve. We have cell phones starting to evolve. So there's going to be a much, much stronger digital trail where they're going to be able to track this guy. If the guy flew anywhere, he's on the grid. You know what I mean? If he rented a car, he's on the grid. anywhere that he was traveling, because like that's what you're going to look for. And like you were saying, Joe, I mean, online they're trying to attribute everybody who's been missing or every cold case in the country is now potentially a Rex Heuermann victim. That's obviously absurd, but I mean, there certainly are going to be pieces that fit. And I'm assuming that when you guys were doing it, if you were still active on this thing, you'd be like, man, I'm digging in and I'm going to find out where this fucker was. I'm going to find every state where he was. I'm then going to reach out to them and I'm going to be like, yo, this is when I've located this guy to have been in Nevada on these dates. What do you got? Did somebody go, you know what I'm saying? And they'll do that all over the country. So, I mean, we'll see, man. Like I have very little doubt, assuming that he's the guy, that he was probably active in other states, because he was he wasn't necessarily leaving the victims in a place that, was difficult for him to get to. Obviously, it was somewhere close to him in terms of him transporting bodies and dumping, and I think that he probably could have done the same thing anywhere he was. Like the thing about Gacy is he was disposing of the kids under his house. That was his personal burying ground. So, until he ran out of room, and then he just started dumping them in the river, and like, I don't think like Gacy did that out of necessity. You know what I mean? Whereas Heuermann didn't seem to be shitting where he was eating in terms of disposing of any of the bodies on his property. So, to me, it seems more likely that he'd be the type of guy that could have done this when he was on the road traveling,
What? Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So definitely, I mean, here's where maybe credit card information can come to play in some of this too. But especially buying airplane tickets, going back through. I guess you'd have to go through the TSA now, but you know what? Customs would be a really good place for investigators to get into that kind of information too. All those records are kept basically indefinitely. So these are the kind of things that the investigators are culling for, and like we said before, Bob. Listen, it, it's the old saying is like if I don't look, I won't find it, right? So sometimes police departments have this kind of like, if we continue to keep on looking, we might find more, and then this
Right.
becomes, worse and worse by the minute. And that's why I had done that interview about going through the Massapequa Preserve and Bethpage State Park, and I haven't seen any action on that yet, but a lot of media outlets picked up on that, and they everyone thinks it's a good idea. Everyone except for the police department.
Well, it's funny. It's funny. I want to talk because we talked about this, Bob, with the folks that are disappearing in Chicago by the river. How much of a factor is that the politics where then just like Joe said, like why are these folks? They're not looking in the park by them because it's going to look bad. It's not going to look good for Chicago. It's not going to look good for Long Island that they're finding bodies. Like how much is that a factor in these investigations, Bob? From your
It's huge, man. It's huge. I mean, look, because it's just not the police department. They're getting orders from up on high. The mayor's office is saying, look, Chicago is a tourist town. We can't have murders. We're already the murder capital of the world. And the same was true back in the 70s, man. I mean, our murder rate's been off the charts for decades, right? So when Gacy, they were thrilled because Gacy wasn't technically a Chicago serial killer. He was actually located in a suburb called Norwood Park. So they were not attributed to the city of Chicago. That was one of the primary reasons Chicago PD didn't want to touch it with a 100-foot pole, because they're like, you know what? That's great. That's not us. They're not putting those 33 bodies on us. And we have no interest. Like Joe was saying, we're good, man. Like let's just go with what we got. 33 is enough. We don't look. So when you factor in the politics of it, and that's always at play in terms of what law enforcement is going to be handcuffed in terms of what they're going to do, they're always hearing from up on high, man. I
well,
mean, that's just fact. So, and it's not a good look. It's not a good look for any city. Any city that is a tourism hub is not going to want to have more bodies or have people worrying about traveling there because they're going to go to a show and get killed. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it makes sense.
and Joe, I mean, you just did it. We were watching a short the other day on our show. We watched one of your shorts. If you wanted to be upset, you're really going to be upset. What you found, like, there's the article. There was only one detective who
Oh
was
God,
working
yeah.
this case. I mean, is
Yeah, the police commissioner Rodney Harrison, he did an interview with Newsday.com, and I encourage people to watch this video because it's about 20 minutes long. But he states that when he first came into office, he basically, I guess, asked for a whole, you know, take up on the case, and he finds out that there was only one detective that was assigned to the Long Island serial killer case, and that one detective wasn't solely working on the Long Island serial killer case. He or she had other duties. And when you watch the video, uh, the commissioner actually chuckles when he says this. I mean, he still at this point, a year and a half into it, he still can't believe it, right? So, I mean, listen, we all speculated all along that nothing was happening in this case, and they weren't really taking it seriously at all. But now we know for sure, and it's a bad look for the previous two administrations. And I see, one of the former commissioners and District Attorney Tim Sini, he's out there doing the media runs, talking about this stuff. But since that interview has come out, I haven't seen a hide or a hair of him. So I think that it's just awful, because what you're telling the families and the victims is you don't matter, and
Right.
it's just an absolute shame, because here's the deal: do we think that this guy stopped? Highly unlikely. So the longer this guy is out there, the worse it gets for people,
Yeah,
and that's
and
And
that's something
Joe,
that
like back when the story broke and the bail application dropped, and we're reading through it, and it reads like a massive PCA, and they lay out the entire case, and then I'm looking at it, and then I'm seeing what they had, and they had everything that they had. Now, granted, they had advancements in DNA, but in terms of that avalanche, in terms of the make, the model of that car, in terms of being able to make a connection, they had enough. I think at that point back then, had they done any investigation, had they not discredited the witness who basically laid eyes on this guy, if they had done any modicum of investigation back then, they probably would have had enough to get a warrant, at least to dig into this guy. If they get the warrant, then they're getting one of his burners, because we know he was using the burners back then. They're probably making the connection. And I had tweeted this month, like whenever the story broke, I'm like, look, if they start attributing more bodies to this guy that happened after that witness came forward and they had that information, there's going to be hell to pay, man. I mean, there just is, because
well,
it's one of those things that
it,
there's not an
it's
explanation
it,
for it.
it's absolutely atrocious, because here's the deal: as far as I'm concerned, what broke this case open isn't the DNA, because his DNA wasn't in the system. So even if they had his DNA and it was in perfect condition, they wouldn't have had it. They could go through the investigative genealogy and all the other stuff that go along with it, but that takes time, right? It's better off to have a sample to compare it to, get that into CODIS, right, the combined DNA index system, and match it up to either one of the two major databases in there, the known and the unknown, and then take it from there. But what broke this case open was that avalanche. And I listen, I don't know for sure, but there's an investigator somewhere in the state police that's responsible for this break. And the reason why I say that is because New York State runs what's called the lawman search. And the lawman search is your partial plates and your descriptions of vehicles. I mean, you could go and ask them, tell me how many Chevy Avalanches, 2009 or 6, whatever it is, green ones on Long Island, and they could give you a list of everyone out there. I mean, you might be, surprised to find out there are hundreds or even thousands of them at the time, but you had some other evidence. You had the pinging of the cell phone in Massapequa. You had the pinging of the cell phone in Manhattan. I mean, when you start to look at all the stuff that they had, you just want to take your head and bang it against the wall.
well, one
I
thing
know.
that I know Bob can comment on this, and I wonder if this is, and I think it is why. Talking about politics behind the scenes, Bob, and you can talk about this. I know I was listening to the Gacy tapes where detectives and groups are kind of jockeying maybe against each other. I know you told a story about where there was two detectives working together. I'm sorry, I forget their names. They're working together, and then one finds out, like, how many years later, that his buddy was going in early to talk to the sergeant to, like, get information. So, like, how is that affecting this? The inner politics of maybe between detectives, between task forces, where maybe they're trying to, like, one up each other, they're not working together, and that affects it. What do you think, Bob?
I mean, is in terms of interdepartmental, that's definitely a thing. But when you talk about like this task force, when they were all patting each other on the back because they were playing nice, I mean, Joe's going to be able to speak to that. That's kind of a rarity. I mean, when you're talking about other agencies trying to say, "Hey, man, let's work together on this thing," where the feds are going to come in and step on everybody's toes and say, "Look, we're taking this shit over. This is us. Pat y'all on the head. Thanks for your help. We'll let you know when we need you," type shit. I mean, this in terms of what happened when they put this task force together, kind of, they tabled that. And it sounds like they actually were able to work in conjunction with one another in an effective type of way. And I'm sure Joe's going to be able to tell us that that's just kind of how the politics of it work. And especially, yeah, I mean, that story with the Gacy thing where, you got, and these guys were partners, you got a guy who's going in jockeying for a detective, he wants to get the bump, and he's running in behind his partner's back and talking with the lieutenant in the morning, saying, "Oh, this is what I got," not letting his partner know. And then ultimately his partner ends up getting the bump, and the dude like gives him the cold shoulder, from then forward. So, I mean, that's like, egos are always at play. We all have egos, and I mean, that's just the reality of us being human beings. And, just because you have a badge and a gun or you're an attorney, we all have egos, and they're all fragile. So, I mean, those things are always going to come into play for sure.
Yeah, and Harrison mentioned that, if you remember, in his press conference when he was talking about this. He says everyone left their egos at the door and this and that. But one of the things, the reason why I was still focusing on the state police, is if the state police kind of held their own little press conference afterwards, and the colonel, whoever he was saying, like, we're part of this. We had to be invited, but we had to accept it and everything like that. So that was a little bit of I think, a jockeying for position there too. And listen, when the day's over, when this thing is finally put to rest, a lot of this will come out exactly who was responsible. But when you think about it, the DNA is great, but that truck leads them to Rex, which then leads them to getting the DNA exemplar, which leads to the other cases, and then everything else seems to fall like dominoes. And it's just that's basically how it went. Could I be wrong? Of course, I've been wrong before, but when you look at what you have, it kind of makes sense.
You're dead on. Like, I as soon as I read that, and I'm like, wait, they had this first generation Avalanche shit for all this time, and they sat on it and no one did anything with it. I mean, to me, like I said, and I don't know if I tweeted or where, I've been like screaming about it for, because I came in sensitive to it because it was the same shit that went on in Gacy. And again, you have marginalized victims where it seemed that law enforcement just didn't give a shit, because they were having, they were kind of like throwing all these young guys as, street urchins, kids that were sex workers out there trying to hustle to make a living. And so the cops didn't seem to be giving them much love in terms of saying, okay, yeah, we're going to dig into this. Plus, back in the 70s, and I had like all these old cops who I loved interview on my pod, and they were all very candid. They were like, look, man, in the early 70s, if it was a gay thing, we didn't give a shit. We're like, oh, it's a gay problem. It's a gay fight. We don't care. I mean, and like, they weren't afraid to say it now because that was the fact back then. You know what I mean? And it was just the mentality back then. So, it's a shame. I think obviously we've come a long way from that in terms of kind of our mentality as a society, thankfully. So, but it doesn't make it okay back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and don't forget, between the corruption problems with Burke and Spoda, right, the district attorney. So that was like probably the reason why none of this other stuff ever gets done, right? Well, we had one investigator working on this. We didn't have to worry about that person worried about getting their ego in the way of who's going to solve it, because it was just that person against himself or herself. And and you just go through this. But here's something I haven't mentioned in any other interview that I've done on this. And we'll just bring it up now.
Exclusive, folks. Exclusive.
Well, here's the deal, right? Back then, GM cars, specifically the Avalanche, had the OnStar. So if they were on top of this way back when, they could have gotten all the GPS coordinates everywhere that truck was. And talk about wrapping that whole thing up in a nice little bow. Like now that they're looking at like how they did in Idaho with the cell phone and putting him at certain locations. They could have done the same thing with his truck back then. However, all that's gone now. They don't keep it that long. And because we're talking 13, 14 years, they don't keep it that long. So
yeah, I mean, there's another, like that Navistar shit on Murdoch was murder for him. You know what I mean? And like they were able to put together, when he turned the engine over, like everything, like they were able to create every movement that he made in relation to that vehicle.
Well, especially when it corroborates with the cell phone data. Like people can question that cell phone data, but when they have the OnStar and it's the exact same thing, it's a lot harder to question that expert who's like, this isn't that great. But before I go to the next question, I did want to plug something here, folks, because what I am wearing right now is Cheryl Mac McCullum's shirt. This is my crime fighting shirt, and I wear it every day. And on the back, it says investigator. And this is done, by justaskjan.com. And every shirt that you buy, guys, every one of these that you buy, I'm going to put this in the goes towards, Mac has a nonprofit that goes towards investigating cold cases. So every shirt you buy not only goes to the small business that Jan runs for the shirts, but also goes towards Mac's nonprofit, which is for, investigating cold cases. And we love Mac, so I definitely wanted to get that plug in there because she's awesome.
Cheryl's good people.
That's awesome.
Cheryl's good people.
So here's the question, and Bob, you kind of brought this up about the feds. Here's the question I have: why haven't they taken over? Like, what are they going to? When are they going to? What's the next step? Why haven't they yet? What do you think, Bob?
I think I'm sure they're still on the periphery involved, but at this point, it's kind of a regional case. I think if it starts to grow, spread its wings, and turn into more of a national case where they're finding, bodies in other places, I think they're going to have to get involved, at that point. But, again, I think it's going to probably the answer is credit. Like at this point, now that they've got him in custody and he's bound over for trial. They're kind of set in terms of New York State. Obviously, they're trying to get, Maureen's case indicted as well, but and hopefully that's coming down the pike. But if we find out this Nevada thing has legs, if anything's going on down in South Carolina, anything happens in Jersey, I think that the feds will take it upon themselves to jump into the fray if it starts, growing tentacles and spreading all over the country.
And Joe, I think we talked about this. If they, first of all, if you want to comment on that, but also if they do take over, then the old death penalty might come into play, right? And then maybe there's some negotiation, because at this point in New York, he's just going to wait. Like, he doesn't care. But then if the feds get involved, maybe we got that. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, well, let's start with the first thing. I agree with Bob. I still think that the feds are going to step into this thing if it even grows legs in regards to Peaches or, Jessica Taylor or Valerie Mack, and this thing starts leaking into other cases of Gilgo, and this guy's responsible for 8, 9, 10, or 11 or whatever. I still think I see the feds step in on this one, because you can make an argument now for federal involvement that, some of these girls came from other states, came into New York for the for doing this stuff. So, you can make an argument right now. And like you said, that leverage, I think they're going to want, right? That leverage of, dangling over the thing and say, listen, the feds are taking this and we're going to go with the death penalty route, unless you start talking about all the different things and, what did we miss? Is there any other bodies out there? Any other states? Who helped you? What was going on? Because right now, they don't have that kind of leverage. They have nothing to make them talk. And,
Right.
And his lawyers aren't going to let him talk to the police now. I mean, you're out of your mind if you think that's the case. People are like, oh, just go and interrogate him. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah. Ask Bob. Bob, would you let me come in and say, listen, we'd like to talk to your client about, 10 other bodies? What would you say? Yeah, here's the door. Don't let it hit you in the ass on the way out. So,
Yeah, plus the feds, in terms of their involvement, if I'm local LE anywhere, you want those deep pockets, even though, because the feds just have more resources in terms of being able to dump more money into it. In terms of the technology they're going to have, they're just going to have the best tech out there. So, there's obviously, like that interplay in terms of how one case might trump another. Say he's convicted on the New York cases before there's a federal case, because theoretically, if the feds get involved and they get another case where there's interstate travel that's involved, and the feds can say, okay, well, we're going to turn this whole thing federal, because I tweeted the other day, which is, no one's been talking about it, but I fully anticipate it's going to happen. I believe that his attorneys are going to file a motion to sever in New York State, which means that they're going to try to go to the judge and say, look, we can't try all three of these together. They all have different evidence. They all took place at different times. I understand that there's similarities in terms of the MO, but the fact of the matter is that we have different evidence on each different case. some cases have much stronger evidence and direct, forensic links, whereas others don't, where we're kind of relying more on pings and location data. And, I mean, you don't want to have this thing blow up at the appellate level, so like his attorneys are going to have to file the motion to sever. Otherwise, you're staring an ineffective assistance claim right in the face because, I mean, we get it all the time. I mean, like if I'm being candid, as private counsel, when I'm being paid for a case, the last thing I ever want to do is when I've got a guy that I know has spent every last dime to get us to handle the one case, if there's multiple victims, is to split it into two where I know he can't pay me for a full second trial. And I know that sounds shitty and I never would make the decision on it. But like in terms of Allison and I and the amount of work that we have to put into it, we know that we're having to do it on the arm because our defendant doesn't have the money to pay for a second case. We can't take that into consideration, even though that's a reality for us. We've got to do what's best for our client in terms of getting the guy a fair trial. So I fully anticipate that this motion to sever, I don't know when it'll happen, but I almost guarantee that it is going to happen, which in theory means that they'd have to try him 3, maybe 4 times, depending on what happens with that fourth indictment, which, is a lot. It's a lot, which is another reason where the feds might want to get involved, because I think that the feds will be able to make a more compelling argument that they try them all at one time. And you're just dealing with different personalities in terms of federal court judges as opposed to state court judges. So we'll see how it plays out, man. But that's going to be interesting to see, because in Gacy, you had 33 victims. They were all killed at different times. Yeah, the MO was the same, but there was certainly an argument that my father and Amarante could have filed the motion to sever and had 33 separate trials. Can you imagine that? You know what I mean? Like 33 times doing the same damn thing over and over. Factually, every case is going to be a little bit different, but still, and ultimately my father and Amarante agreed that there would be no point in it. And in that case, we had, at the time that he was tried, 17 of the victims were not identified because, again, back then there's no DNA. They're going strictly off dental records, medical records. They're looking for broken bones. They're making, comparisons in terms of dental records. If a kid was wearing a specific type of belt that was a little out of the, out of the norm, or a specific piece of jewelry, they were making identifications like that. So it was tough. And that was basically a trial where they had to go with a bunch of John Does, where they didn't even know the victims' names at trial. So it was different. It was a crazy trial, but that was kind of par for the course, and I was thinking about it. I mean, when is the last like true serial killer case that we've had? Like, can you guys, like, I was trying to think of it. I'm like, when is the last like actual serial? Like, I mean, we know we had Israel Keys, but
the Golden State guy, that Joe D'Angelo.
Yeah,
but then he ends up. I think he took the plea, right? He just pled guilty,
Right.
and that was during like the whole COVID time too. But yeah, what we were saying before about severing these cases, yeah, it sounds like good on paper too, right? But like you said, you're lighting a match there. So the feds, and they talk about the opportunity where I'm sure they're saying it's like, if we do it, we run the big risk of bringing in the feds and the death penalty. So
Right.
I don't know. It's a dangerous game they're going to play with that for sure.
For sure, man.
So one thing as far as the feds go that I'm curious about, Joe, with you, as far as you're a detective and you've been working this, especially if you're on this new, I guess, this task force, whatever, or you've been working it for a while, how does that, like, are you like, I don't want the feds, I've been working on this for so fucking long, the feds are just going to step in and take over? Like, what is the feeling like behind the scenes when you've been working this case and now someone's like, all right, I'm taking over. Step down, son. This is my turn.
Yeah, it's not like television, right? I know in television or like in the Die Hard movies, right? It's like, oh, this is my case, not anymore. And the FBI comes in, elbows their room in. Listen, like was Bob saying before, listen, you want the feds in on these cases. They have, their pocketbook is limitless, right? It's the taxpayers' money. They don't care. They'll spend it all.
Right.
So, yeah, and you want all the access to all the toys and everything else. But when you're working some of these cases and you have that chance of that federal nexus, the detectives themselves understand that this is a consequence that can come along. And I dealt with it on occasion, and it's actually kind of seamless, the transition from the two, because it is what it is. Like, as in the detective squad in New York City, you have so many cases and so many things going on. Like, you end up throwing cases at people, right? So, as part of the cold case where we would go into squads throughout the city and take a look at some of their cases, and we'd have other detectives. Listen, take this case. I don't got time to work on it. We got a lot of good stuff on it, but I haven't. And they're throwing things at you because why? There isn't enough time. So if you are burdened with a huge case like this case is a huge burden. And let me tell you something. I believe Suffolk in the long run would love to give all this up too because it would stop the bleeding of cash. Because this task force is going, nonstop, probably 24 hours a day since this thing really kicked off.
So it's more of a relief, is what you're saying. You're kind of like, all right,
Right.
I got other shit I got to do, like, and plus the
Yeah.
spotlight, right? Like the spotlight's off a little bit. It's not glaring on you at the same time, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
assume.
yeah. I mean, and it's like at the end of the day, listen, most detectives are going to just say, we just want to see the case solved. We want to see somebody brought to justice. We want to see the families and the victims, get what they deserve in that respect too. And quite frankly, who cares who solves this thing, right? And I think that's why it's been great so far with the press conferences between all of the people involved. No one has really come up yet, pump their chest and say, it was us, it was me. We haven't seen any of that. They all seem to be playing nice in the sandbox right now. And the one group that's always lurking in the back, the feds haven't made any public statements about any of this stuff. So I think that's a little telling too in certain aspects.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, Bob, and both you guys actually, but Bob first, because we talked a lot about this a little bit on Twitter.com, and it came up because, Asa had the press conference, and then John Ray had some interviews and some press conferences, and John says he has a source. He's not going to reveal the source for his reason. They have good reasons, but this source is privy to what's going on, and the source knows that Asa knew that the house, Rex's house, had sex workers in there, and beyond that, he says that she's a sociopath. He says that because her hairs were found, that she should be a suspect. And also, he says he doesn't think that the district attorney has spoken to her, regarding this, which is just I don't know, wild to me. But I don't know, Bob, if you want to comment on it first, and then Joe about this.
Yeah. I mean, I was repulsed, as a defense attorney, and I understand his passion. I understand that he's representing the family of a victim. I understand where I think his heart was in the right place. But in terms of just like flame throwing her without coming with any receipts, like on national TV, and I don't give a shit how many people watch News Nation, enough watch it. And the thing spread like wildfire. It's reckless, to me. And look, I mean, every single one of us, when the story breaks, the first thing you think is, how the fuck didn't the wife know? I mean, it was the same thing with Gacy. I mean, he was married to Carol, his second wife, up until 75, which means Tim McCoy's killed in 72. Bukovich is killed in 75. There's no way he wasn't active in those 3 years preceding that. And we know that Carol had come, like the story is that she had, when he buried Tim McCoy in the crawl space, which was allegedly his first victim, and the body starts smelling. He hadn't done any kind of remedial measures down in the crawl space. So the thing is, like, the corpse is rotting and it's coming up through the dryer vent, because this crawl space was like literally 18 inches high, and it would vent out through the crawl. So and there's flies coming up through the dryer vent. And she's like, what in the fuck is that smell? And he's like, oh, it's got to be a dead raccoon. So he gets down there real quick, pours concrete, puts a slab down there. It gets rid of the smell. And that was a very teachable moment for Gacy in terms of moving forward. But then it comes out like later, so she's got that kind of like sitting in the back of her head. But beyond that, she knows that Gacy's out trolling all the time, like at all hours of the night. And then she came and made, like, there were 2 or 3 interviews that she did where she would hear him in the garage at all hours of the night. And she said she would occasionally hear screaming coming from there. So, like, when you hear this kind of shit, like it makes you think, is it a willful blindness thing? Like I've been married 17 years, right, man? And if I'm flaking off for not only like every night, but like once a week, Allison's all over me like stink on shit. Like, where the fuck are you? What are you doing? You know, like there's, you know, I mean, for her not to have been at all concerned or in any way, shape, or form like hip to what was going on in any sense of the word seems unlikely. It doesn't turn her into an accomplice, though. You know, I mean, obviously the transfer DNA with the hair in the burlap bag, you know, clearly if he brought one of the victims home, if that's where he was having the sex with the victims, clearly the victim could have picked up a hair there, you know,
Well, yeah,
obviously.
Joe, you tweeted about this, right? What? There's go ahead, talk about that, the hair and why that could be.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got low cards exchange principle, right? The theory of transfer between, two people or objects, what have you. Somebody takes something with them, somebody leaves something behind. Listen, maybe his wife put his clothes out for him that day, and he put the clothes on the bed, and he gets dressed, and there's a hair file. She's in the car, or the truck, what have you. Hair files. Not from me, but from other people who have hair, right? So you're going to find anybody that goes into your car leaves something behind, right? They come into your house, they're a guest, they leave something behind. So to say that because her hair is there that makes her a suspect, no. I mean, so let me ask you, if they found a cat hair, would the cat be a suspect too? I mean, come
Right.
on. At certain points, you have to just kind of draw the line. But Bob said something a little earlier, and I'm going to echo it because I've said it before too. These guys seldom crap where they eat, right? I mean, this is something that you want to avoid, and he's done this now, avoided detection for a real long time. And Jay, you can attest to this. A lot of nosy neighbors on Long Island, right? So,
Yeah, for sure.
oh my God, there's always somebody looking out the window. There's always somebody into somebody else's business, right? I mean, it's part of Long Island culture.
For
And
sure.
to think that he was bringing girls back to his house and nobody has ever seen one, because if they saw one, believe me, they would have been on Channel 12 News, you name it, up and down. Oh, I saw this girl there, I saw that girl there. We've gotten no.
I don't know if you guys remember Linda Richmond on SNL. Talk amongst yourselves. Like, that's the Long Island neighbor. Let's get together, ladies, and let's talk amongst ourselves about what's going on, around. So yeah, people are nosy AF, if
Oh
you know what I'm
God.
saying.
I mean,
Uh,
it was the same with Gacy. So Gacy it was a bedroom community. You know, these houses were like if you drive by there now, I mean, we're talking these houses are maybe 10 yards apart. You know, and it was the same thing. You know, when that story broke, every reporter's out there knocking on every door trying to get a scoop. So they're talking to every neighbor. Did you see anything? And it was like, oh, like Gacy wasn't as you weren't getting as like, oh, I wouldn't let my kids trick or treat at their house because it was so creepy type shit. Like with Gacy, it was like, he seemed like a nice guy. He had huge parties with 300-400 people, you know, like it was kind of a different scenario, and Gacy was crapping where he ate. You know what I mean? He was like, for him, it was a perfect setup because once he got divorced from Carol in 75, he had free reign. Like he'd bring those kids home. Obviously, at that point, again, like the neighbors, like his next door neighbors, his direct neighbors were an older couple. And, they talked to him all the time. They basically shared a driveway, I mean, and like that was Gacy's move. He'd pull up in this driveway, bring the kids in. They never used the front door of the house. He had a side entrance, back towards the garage because you'd pull up past the house and hit the garage. So it was always the side entrance. And I mean, nobody ever caught wind of it, I mean, and the guy was, at some point he felt like he was bulletproof, and he got reckless. I mean, they finally ended up getting him because of his recklessness and his overconfidence in terms of they're never going to get me type of mentality. And they did, but I mean, he was so sloppy with the last one and he picked the wrong victim. He picked a victim whose mother was just adamant, and they knew, like they made the connection with them in terms of, the kid went out of the pharmacy because the mom picked him up from work because it was her birthday. And the kid says, Mom, wait, I got to go talk to this guy about a job in the summer. And, the mom's like, okay, well, my son's been gone now for 2 hours. Who was that contractor? And of course, the pharmacy owner says, oh, that was John Gacy. She says, okay, well, he's done something with my son. So she drives right over to Des Plaines Police Department and starts raising hell, and she wasn't going anywhere. She's like, my kid, don't give me the my kid ran away thing, because my kid didn't run away. I know that for a fact, So like that kind of thing evolved with him. But yeah, man, it's I don't know. I just like I'm with Joe on it. I certainly don't think she was complicit. Like, I don't
Well,
think
let me
she
ask.
was helping, but like, I mean, whether or not she had some knowledge,
Is
it's
there?
just hard being a married couple. Like, in Joe, I don't know if you're hitched or not, but
Yep.
Jay is. It's like our wives are omnipresent. They know what's going on with
Oh
us.
yeah.
They know if
Uh,
we're missing in action for a minute. They know if we're doing things.
yeah.
You can only say I'm still at the office so many times before either one, they think that you're cheating on them, or two, they think you're up to no good of some kind. You know what I mean? So this went on for a long time. So it's like it's kind of implausible to me to think that she didn't know that anything was going on.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been married 24 years. My wife's in the next room wondering when she can come in and clean my area up over here, right? So, it's just, are you done yet? I need to clean up on there, you know? So,
I'm hungry.
yeah. Oh, no, we ate first. Trust me. I know how to do that, you know, because, you know,
guys, but by the way, what I wanted to pull up here right now, before we go to the next question, if we finish this thought, is Joe is trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Oh, Joe, 967. He's so
Oh, let's
close,
go.
folks. I'm going to throw it in the chat here. I see we got a bunch of people watching. Please make sure you're going to Joe's YouTube and subscribing. He's got his shorts are great, but I know, Joe, you said you're going to start working on some stuff with it too.
yep.
Additionally, make sure you're going to the Defense Diaries podcast. You're giving it 5 stars because it's amazing and you're getting this information in real time. So I just wanted to go that real
Yeah,
quick.
I expect to see him at a grand like after this. You know what
Uh,
I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
as we're progressing, and I'm like 41 away from 7K on Twitter. So if
oh,
you
let's
don't,
get Bob's Twitter up here while we're at it.
Yep.
come on, like I'm putting out gold. You know what I mean? I mean,
I
like
do know what you mean. You are putting out
I'm out
goals.
there, man. I'm doing the work. So, and it's like, Joe and I are just facts guys. We're
Well,
not
I know
speculating.
people really appreciate you guys because you're not bullshit guys. You're
Right.
facts
I
guys,
don't, yeah, I
and that's
don't
the
mess
bottom
around
line.
with that.
What's that?
I
I'm
said I don't
certainly
mess around with that.
John Ray. You know, I'm certainly not going to like blowtorch some poor lady who at this point, is a victim along, in a different way, but she's a victim nonetheless, as well as his kids, and it's like for that guy to go out like that and just flamethrow her like that was brutal.
Well, I want to
It's
ask
like
you this, Joe. Is there any way? I mean, the district attorney basically said they're not suspects. He clear like they were away. Is there any way that they're still investigating them at this point, like that they're surveilling them, or like they're cleared, right? Or am I wrong that they're still potentially suspects in this?
Anybody and everyone can always be a suspect. Just because the police say nothing to worry about, nothing to see here, that doesn't mean anything. They could always turn around and slap cuffs on somebody down the road if they find something. You know, listen, they do have lawyers now. They are being represented by lawyers, so it'll be very difficult to talk to them without having a lawyer present, right? Because of the Miranda rules. So that's an interesting aspect of it, and that, that's what John Ray talked about too. Like, why bother having attorneys? Well, you know what? In this day and age, everyone's told that if you're going to be questioned by the police, no matter what, if you did something wrong or not, get a lawyer, right? We tell people this all the time, so I don't find that unusual anymore.
Yeah,
And also, and there's money involved now, right? There's a GoFundMe. So yeah, listen, lawyers are an important part of this whole thing. I always say, Bob, like them or not, they're part of the process.
I mean,
yeah,
if I
sure.
had people camping out at my fucking house all the time, I tell you, and like just the media, like I would want someone who knows
Right.
the law to know what I
Make
could
these
say. What I
comments.
go ahead, Bob.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, just you want a spokesperson. You want somebody who's going to take your shield is essentially what, it's like any of these families that are involved in any of these high profile cases, when the media is just hounding them, they need that shield. And it makes the most sense that it's going to be an attorney that understands the law in case there is some kind of issue with potential culpability down the road. You want to be extremely careful of what you're divulging, all those things in terms of, the dynamics of that are things that you want to have the right person acting as your shield. Like you're not gonna hire a marketing person to go out there because you're not trying to sell yourself. You're trying to shield yourself from the collateral damage that's coming at you in waves. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, to me, it made perfect sense. I never, obviously as an attorney, and Joe, I'm sure you'll attest, the cops are never trying to help you. You know, the cops are trying to, and I'm talking about if they're questioning you. And I'm not talking about if they're canvassing a neighborhood, talking to witnesses or potential witnesses. I'm talking about if they're bringing you in, they're needing an alibi, they're investigating you. And if you're in that situation, especially, like, people are always like, oh, if you're innocent, why would you get a lawyer? That's especially when you get a lawyer. If you're innocent and you're in the cops are saying, look, we need you to come in, you know, by way of them asking that there's something they need to find out from you and you're on their radar, whatever the case may be. That doesn't mean that you don't go in and talk to them, but you're certainly going to have counsel with you, just because you never know what they're thinking. You know what I mean? And it depends on where you're at and the kind of the circles that go around the investigation, and they start, with the inner circle, and they move out concentrically in terms of, like, their investigation. They're always going to look at the people that are closest to the victims. They're going to do their victimology, and they're going to start close in, and they're going to work their way out. To me, you always get a lawyer. I mean, it's my first rule. And then you don't talk. Now, if you've got a situation like where you've got a flat out rock solid alibi, like where you can say, look, man, I was not here and I've got definitive proof. Obviously, you're going to the officers and you're saying, all right, detective, this is what I've got. I couldn't have done this because I've got a rock solid alibi and here's my proof of it. Obviously, in that situation, you're going in and you're making a statement. But even then, you should have counsel. You know what I'm saying? It's a smart play. It's not he looks guilty. And well, let me ask you, Joe, in your experience, if somebody lawyered up, did that give you the feeling, and say it was somebody that wasn't necessarily a target at that point, or maybe even a person of interest, but they were on your radar, and if they come in and they lawyer up, like, what was your general consensus? Like, as a cop, what are you thinking? Like, what are you like? Did that raise a red flag for you if they lawyered up? Or are you like, all right, this person seems like they kind of are taking care of their shit?
It would depend, right, on what the focus or who the focus really was. So, as the police, you understand that these things are going to happen from time to time, and you're also surprised when you have a suspect who has been arrested and he refuses to get a lawyer, and now he's willing to talk too. So those are the kind of things where you just shake your head. You figure this case is going to be impossible. This guy's been arrested 100 times. He's never going to talk to us. Next thing you know, he's just giving up the whole thing. And then you get the one kid who gets arrested for the first time, and you can't break him. I mean, it's just it just depends on what you're doing. But listen, those magic words, I want a lawyer, right? That unequivocal request for a lawyer, that's part of our rights as U.S. citizens. And you'd be surprised about how many people don't invoke them.
Oh, dude, I would not be surprised. You would not believe how many repeat customers I have, and I tell them, I'm like, hey, we were able to handle this case. They kept you out of jail. You took a little bit of a beating on it. Next time, shut up. You don't make a statement. And then, but and I try to explain to people, when, even though I pound them over the head with that little bit of advice, when you're in the situation, when the adrenaline's flowing, when you're nervous and or scared, and you know how you guys operate. I mean, you guys are like, look, man, like, we're not trying to jam you up here. We're trying to help you out. And the only way that we can help you out is by you helping us out. We just need this. You know what I mean? So they play that, and they're allowed to. The Supreme Court says that you guys are allowed to do that. Like, in terms of like any kind of interrogation type technique, you guys are allowed to lie in terms of, trying to kind of extract information, and a lot of guys, even if they've been if they're repeat offenders, it's a hard sell to turn away from, if especially if you've got a really skilled cop who seems genuine in terms of saying, look, man, but it's like I'll have clients that where they had them dead to rights, and they're like, and they're still talking. And I'm like, man, what are you doing? I'm like, all you're doing at that juncture is giving them evidence. Like, you can't say anything. Like, it's simple. You just say the 3 magic words, I want my lawyer, and it's over, but it's like you said, man, it's unbelievable how many of my clients like talk when they're picked up second, third, fourth time, man. It's like,
and some people think they're smarter than the cops too, and that's the other thing, right? So they'll
sure.
arrogance sets in there, all these other things. And listen, when you have somebody who's been on the run, so to speak, for 13 years, there's I'm sure there's that level of arrogance that they come across. We,
Oh, totally.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, we have no indication if he made any statements from the night he was arrested. We
None.
have no indication, and it could have very well been, because that's your time, right? You bring him in, you read him Miranda, you have him sign the form, and we know now in New York State all of these interviews are recorded. All these interrogations are recorded. Excuse me, interviews not so much. So these interrogations are recorded. So we have no idea. They've given us no indication if any statements were made, and there's another wild card that might get dropped on us down the road.
I was just going to say, I know I don't know if you've been following it, Joe, but talk about a guy who thinks he was smarter than the cops. If you're following the Black Widower trial with old Thami Randolph, that's a narcissist sociopath that certainly thought he was smarter than the cops and everyone he spoke to, and really he's a dope and he's going to be found guilty. I don't know. What do you think? But we won't go into that because that's a whole other thing. While we set up we've been here for almost an hour with you guys dropping the knowledge. Thank you. And while I set you guys up for the final question, which is where we're going to go from where you guys think this investigation is going to go from here. We have something we have to do here, and that is we got a book giveaway. So let's set this up here. We got the wheel of everyone that replied to that. Look at this wheel. Look at this fucking wheel, guys. We got the wheel here, and then we got 75 entries, and I'm going to spin this wheel, and one of these folks is going to win a signed cold case handbook written by Joe Giacalone. So here we go, folks. Oh, I don't have a
wheel.
I don't.
Fortune.
I'm so mad. I had a drum roll. So let me see. I got.
Does that thing spin any faster?
No, I'm gonna push it. It's gonna spin. All right. So here we go, folks. Here we go. Boom.
Oh yeah, look at that thing go.
And it's gonna pop up with the big winner.
Oh, who is it? It's too small. I can't read it.
It is. It's going to pop up. Miss Wildside, Christine, big winner. I don't know. What do you want me to have them DM you, Joe? How do you want to?
Yeah, well, they can actually DM you if you want to with their name and address.
Yeah, and I know Christine. Christine, yeah, we'll.
If they want the books, signed to them, whatever, tell me exactly what you want done, and I'll get it out in the mail.
Awesome. That's so much. Thanks so much for doing this, by the way, Joe. You didn't have to do that, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, hey, listen, you guys have been phenomenal for me already. So that's the least I can do.
Awesome. Yeah, so, actually, I wanted to see if I can pull. Let me go back to that screen because I think I've been trying forever, guys, to figure out a way to show you guys. Let me just close this. To show you guys the love from the folks, because I've been trying to figure out a way, and I think I did, to show the chat so you guys can see. But let's see if it works. Please work.
If not, we just come back in, right?
Let's see. Oh, can you guys see the chat? Can you see it? Let me see if I can make it.
Yeah, I can see it. Well, it's there. I can.
Hold on, let me make it. Let me try to make it larger so you can actually read this freaking thing. Guys, show them the love on here. Please let them know how you're feeling. I can make this even. Let them know how much you appreciate them. Show them the love for coming on here and dropping the knowledge. And
is this the verdict? Like, we always have to highlight that because it's hilarious.
No, I'm gonna, Joe, I'll give you a little inside information here, Joe. So one of these days, I'm on here and I'm doing like a heartfelt speech to Bob because he helped me out with the thing. He didn't have to, and he really helped me. So I'm doing this speech, and I got this guy who's just pumping out, "Is this the verdict?" And we're not even at the verdict part of a case that we're watching, and he just keeps pumping out, "Is this the verdict?" So now every time Bob comes in my chat or comes on the stream, Bob's like, "Is this the verdict?" And you guys see, look at this. Hearts from Houston. We love you, Joe. We love you, Joe. Thank you so much. Thank you, Joe and Bob. So while this is up, guys, hit us with Joe first. Where are we going from here? What do you think the next steps are in this case?
I think the obvious is what Bob had said before, that the fourth piece of the Gilgo 4, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, is going to get added to the docket. And I also think that we are going to get the identification of Peaches. I think they already know who she is based on the Karen Vagata information, that they knew about this for a long time before coming public with it. Because if you remember, last October, the FBI had reached out to the Mobile, Alabama Police Department for help trying to identify somebody. Now, what I don't believe that the FBI thought that the Mobile Police Department would put this on Facebook. Now they thought they were being slick, right? They put it on Facebook and they didn't use the name Peaches, and nor did they use Long Island, New York. But they put a picture of her tattoo on on the uh, on
Yeah,
the
I saw
post.
that,
So
which was on his breast. Like
yeah,
I swear I thought I saw a little of the areola there. I was like, wait a second, like because I was reading through it, and I'm like, man, that's kind of a racy picture to put up there. Yeah, I
yeah.
agree with Joe. I think like in the way that it works with a profile, so they got his DNA. They still have to go in and they've got to analyze it, right? So that's going to take time. We know Vegas is talking 6 to 8 weeks, and a lot of that is building in the time it's taking them to put his profile together. Once they get that, I expect that Marines domino will fall because they just need that in order to get that profile and get it matched up. And we'll see what happens with Vegas. We'll see, because like I have to believe that you've got other jurisdictions that are very interested in this. That there's enough people out there, and with the internet the way that it is, we're a much smaller world than we ever were before in terms of kind of just the dissemination of information. So, it's like I have to think that they're going to be trying to close other cases. They're going to have his profile. And one of the things that I've been debating in terms of his profile, New York State's got a very rigid rule. And I was having this debate, and Joe, I don't know if we were following each other at this point, but New York, they're kind of their in stone rule is that you got to be a convicted felon before they upload it into CODIS, right? So, but what I was at, so there's two ways you could do it though. You don't necessarily have to put his profile and upload it into CODIS so that he's in there for comparison's sake. But is there, and I'm asking you because I don't know, and I kept asking this question. I'm like, is there a New York lawyer that can answer this for me? Because in Illinois, we can get pretrial detainees, like the judge can order it and they got to give it up. You know what I'm saying? And we allow them to put it into CODIS. But in terms of just running it, saying, okay, we've got his profile, we're just going to run it and see if we get a hit. Not necessarily where we're uploading it in so that it's in the system for comparison's sake, but running it to see if it hits on anybody, because there's different sources for DNA in the databases. You've got offenders that are in there, but you also have, if you have a crime scene and they've collected multiple samples of DNA, they've got those profiles done, they don't know who is who. So if you've got a guy who's never been an offender, he's a first-time offender, he's not in the system, they're not able to identify him, he's never used any of the private databases or hasn't used, GEDmatch or opted in, and they have it just sitting there and it's from an active crime scene that's now cold, that's going to be sitting there. So, if they're going to run, I'm curious if Joe, if they could just run it. Like, because I know Nevada doesn't have the same laws as New York, like where they'll be able to run it. Like other jurisdictions aren't going to have the same handcuffs that New York does. But like, I just couldn't get the right answer to that. And it was driving me nuts. I was debating so many people and I was trying to explain to them there's a difference between being placed in the system for comparison against everybody else that ever is run like in through the system, and as opposed to just running it to see if there's a hit in a match on any of the profiles in the database. You know what I mean? So like, I just don't
right.
know how that works out there.
So, like New York has its own database, right? It has its own local state database. New York City has its own database, which has also been under attack by activists, too. So, we've seen a lot of activism in regards to a lot of this stuff, and it's become very difficult for the police to actually conduct some of these searches. Now, we just saw the big fight back and forth, basically, to get the warrant, to get the DNA, to get it into the system, because Maryland versus King is that Supreme Court decision from 2013, if I remember correctly, that says upon arrest, you can take DNA. And they said the Supreme Court justices said it's just like taking fingerprints and photographs during the booking process. And New York State right away said, no way, we're not doing it unless you're convicted. Now, New York has always been very liberal with these kind of things, even interrogations. We could have a whole show just on that, what New York won't let you do. But for instance, we had a problem with when we remember the Karina Vetrano case, trying to get familial DNA even examined in that case. So there are a lot of new rules that are facing police departments in New York State. I'm not familiar with all of them at this point because I've been out now for so long, so I really haven't gotten that kind of back information. But the issue that comes down to it's still very difficult to do this. But now that they got the warrant, and this is, the feds are going to take this. It's going to go to CODIS, and the database you're referring to is that forensic database, the crime scenes, the unknown samples, and
Exactly.
that's the area that they're going to focus in on for sure.
And so that's the answer to my question. So they will be able to run that against that because that's what I was asking. I said I understand that they're not going to be able to put it in until he's convicted. However, they got to be able to run it. It seemed because like in theory, it was crazy to me for them not to be able to run it to see if we can get any more matches. I mean, we've got a guy that we at this point feel pretty strongly that he's the guy, right? And we're concerned that there could be additional victims. No part of me thinks that he was inactive for all those years. I think that he was very active, so I mean, to me, it seems crazy that, they're not going to be able to find a way to circumvent the system and be able to run it. So thank you for that answer. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a shame that they have to jump through these hoops anyway. You would seem to think that this was pretty much a standard thing. Like you said, this is a alleged bad dude, right? I mean, this guy's just not like, robbing candy stores. Even that's bad, but we're talking about murdering people and dumping bodies and stuff. I mean, come on, guys. Let's get this together.
Right.
Right. Guys, thank you so freaking much. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. I know the folks really appreciate it. I appreciate it. I think it's a little different when you guys go on other shows and you have a little bit of time, but you don't really get to like expound on stuff. So I'm so glad we were able to do this and you guys were able to drop the knowledge and everyone. And I want to get Joe out of here before his wife gets on and smacks him in the head because she wants to clean the area.
Yeah, she should be like, here's the thing, come on, let's get out of there.
Get dust it, Joe. Joey, I said you to dust it. You're still on the fucking show, Joe. I need you off there and clean the computer.
It's time.
I'm waiting for the door to, knocking on the door saying, hey, what's going on in there?
Well, Allie, Bob's wife just busts through the door and it's like, Bob, we got to get the hell off here. What are you doing? So,
yeah.
Joe's at 979. Guys, let's get him to 1,000 on YouTube. Let's get Bob. What do you got, Bob? 7,000. Let's get Bob to 7,000 on the twitter.com. Guys, please follow them.
I signed up on the Twitter.
Look at that. Joe got you there, Bob. So,
yeah, I got it.
They take their time to come on my show. I really appreciate it. So let's show them the love. Tweet at them. Let them know, you appreciate them coming on. Share, guys. We say this every time. Share Joe's, Twitter, Bob's Twitter, Defense Diaries. Tell your neighbor, tell your friends. Let them know. These people know what they're talking about, and they want to get real information. There's no better, fellas to get it from than Joe and Bob. Thank you guys so much. And deuces, YOLO, and fuck you, Ted.
Hey, Joe.